So oftentimes when a photographer gets asked, what's your favorite photo? You'll get a huge range of answers, whether or not that's their most commercially successful photo or a photo that is more emotionally relevant or significant to them. And so today I kind of want to explore that question, at least for myself. For me, it definitely falls into the latter. One of my favorite photos that I've ever taken was actually a photo that I took very early on in my photography journey. Actually, I think within the first 2 years of taking it. And to this day, I still think of it as the reason why I love photography so much. So let's give a little bit of background before I really start to explore this specific photo. If you don't know, I actually grew up in Hong Kong. I was born in Canada, but I moved to Hong Kong when I was 2.5 with my parents. I consider the most innocent and fun-filled time of my life as a child in Hong Kong. Then when I was 9 years old, I moved back to Canada. And when you're 9 years old, you're kind of entering pre-adolescence, you're entering puberty, and for most people, puberty isn't exactly fun. So that's why I kind of attribute my childhood being in Hong Kong. Flash forward several years when it's now 2015, and I'm 20 years old now. Over the course of about 11 years between 2004 and 2015, I actually hadn't returned back to Hong Kong for a multitude of reasons. And finally in 2015, I got the chance to go back. And this was about 2 years into getting into photography. I had just started really learning what my Canon Rebel T3i did. I had picked up a GoPro Hero 3 at Costco, and I had my trusty old Samsung Galaxy S5. I was just really enjoying just taking photos of whatever, and for me to return back to my childhood home, I was really excited to capture this city from my new perspective of being a young adult versus from when I was a kid. I want to revisit some of my old childhood playgrounds, my old childhood home, and see what it looked like from, not a 8-year-old, 9-year-old child, rather as a 20-year-old man. So a huge part of growing up in Hong Kong was family. And specifically in this story, it's actually my paternal grandmother who recently passed away. And so that's kind of why I wanted to tell this story, because it's kind of a dedication to my memories of my grandmother, my mama, and what this photo signifies in terms of our relationship and who she was. So where I took this photo is my grandmother's kitchen in this small Hong Kong apartment that's like maybe 4 to 5 meters long, 3 to 4 meters wide for 3 people, my grandmother, my grandfather, and my uncle, who all lived there. And this was an apartment that I'd spent a lot of time in, whether or not that was for family dinners where all of my dad's siblings and their kids, we all cram in there, and we have this very tightly knit family dinner in Cheung Sawa. And I would also get dropped off there by my parents when they were doing something, and I would spend the day with my grandparents, going to wet markets, walking around. And so this specific perspective of my grandmother's kitchen is ingrained into who I am. At a glance, like kind of messy, kind of cluttered, full of ingredients, full of vegetables, full of bowls, full of takeout containers, but somehow it's still organized. And growing up, my dad would always tell me stories about when he and his siblings would try to sneak food. They would have to be very careful. They would take some food and then they would memorize how the labels were positioned, where it was, to like the millimeter. But somehow my grandmother always knew, and that kind of just signifies how much time my grandmother spent there and how much she knew her own kitchen and her workspace. So this kitchen, this scene reminds me of my grandmother so deeply. And this is kind of why I really love photography. You get to capture these moments of time that remind you of a whole section of your life, a whole feeling, a whole emotion. It also kind of sits together with this odd visual way that I see what time is. When I was a kid, I learned how to use Flash animation. And if you've ever used Adobe Flash, you'll know that the keyframes, or where every single frame of an animation sits, is kind of visualized as a small rectangle with a black dot in the middle. And it might be a little weird, but that's kind of how I view time. That's how I view how this whole world continues moving forward as a moment in time that is constantly being animated, and this whole world is this one big crazy animation. And these frames that we've passed can't be returned to. They're this one moment that will happen for that breath, that blink that will never happen again. And we as photographers, or when you take videos, you try to pluck a specific moment out of time to remind you of a moment that was significant or emotionally impactful for you, or you're trying to communicate something in that moment for someone else or for yourself. Yeah, that's kind of why I love this photo and why I love photography, because these stories that I get to tell, I try to express them through my images. This video is dedicated to my grandmother. I miss her a lot, I love her a lot, and I'm always just so thankful for everything that she did. I just wanted to quickly film a video talking about that. I've been kind of sitting on this one for a while, reflecting on my relationship with my grandmother. And I wanted to kind of talk about it, just to remember what I'm feeling right now, what I'm thinking about, and to pair that in with, photography and my creative journey. It's been a lot of fun doing all of this stuff, and I sometimes get lost in like the technicality aspect of it. I think sometimes we forget why we do things, and when we get lost in the commercial aspect, when we get lost in the comparisons of where you are and where somebody else that you respect is. And I know that I've been getting caught up in, I wish I was able to create that, which very much ties back into my last kind of talking video about imposter syndrome. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. I'll see you later. Bye.